So I've been getting some customer service emails asking why our holsters for the Sig P365 AXG Legion are currently out of stock, unavailable. The answer is very simple. Sig is doing Sig things again. So let me explain. Sig has a long history of making rolling design changes to lots of pistol models without making it clearly definable when that modification or change took effect, which serial numbers are affected, and giving no consideration at all to holster fits. And so there are now two versions of the P365 AXG Legion grip module, both metal, not interchangeable with each other. However, they're not marked in any clearly distinguishing way. You have to either take off the grip panels and look at the engraving, which is super unhelpful, or you have to be able to visually distinguish based on relatively subtle machining differences that are visible in the frames. And we had heard that there was going to be, at the end of 2024, we heard that a new generation of the AXG Legion P365 grip module was coming. And we had held off on supporting it with a holster because we were hearing that they were going to change it. We weren't sure when. We didn't have any clear info on it, but we finally just bit the bullet, got a Gen 1, and built holsters for it. The AXG Legion Gen 1 did not fit any holsters we designed for the polymer factory frame for the macro. And that was because it was significantly different in a number of key dimensions, particularly the distance from the top edge of the frame to the underside of the Picatinny rail was significantly different. But also on metal frames, you just have a lot of sharper edges. There are certain small things that affect the exact surfaces where holsters interact with firearms. So like a holster has to grip on the inside edge of the trigger guard there, and if that radius is different, rounder on one, sharper on the other, it'll dramatically change how the holster fits and how hard the retention is to get past. So I have Gen 1 and Gen 2 P365 AXG Legion frames. At a glance, to anybody who's not a machinist, these will be basically indistinguishable. What I heard from Sig is if you remove the grip panels, take these G10 guys off, and you have a number ending in 610 engraved there, you've got a Gen 1. If you have a number ending in 868, you have a Gen 2. Having to get a T10 Torx bit and pull off a grip panel in order to see that, and it's only engraved on one side, so if you're not sure which side, you'll probably end up taking them both off. You'll almost always guess wrong. But on the Gen 1, the transition up from the side of the trigger guard here is fairly smooth. There's basically a continuous face that runs along these corners and then down there. On the Gen 2, they've moved that face right here. There's now this sharp shoulder, and the roll pin is a little different in location, and that is going to dramatically interfere with holster fit. They've also changed the distance from the top edge of the grip module to the underside of the pick rail again. So that will change the position in which a light sits. And so these new AXG Gen 2 frames are not compatible with our AXG Gen 1 holsters, and they're also not compatible with our AXG Gen 1 light-bearing holsters either, because they put the light in a different place. The biggest dimensional change, though, and the one that's most frustrating to me, is a major difference in the width of the trigger guards. This is exactly the same thing between the P365 and 365 XL and the macro. The macro has a way fatter trigger guard. Between the Gen 1 AXG Legion and the Gen 2, we have a approximately 50 thousandths of an inch difference in width. Now, 50 thousandths of an inch doesn't sound like that big a deal, but when you cram a trigger in that is that much wider than what the holster was designed for, it makes a big difference. So, this spring, Sig silently released this Gen 2 AXG frame. Last I checked recently, all their website photos on the Sig Sauer website still show only the Gen 1 frame. There is no acknowledgement that there's a Gen 2 version at all, no rubric to, no documentation to help you distinguish between them, and there's no way for Sig to make sure that all the Gen 1s are sold out of the distribution wholesale pipeline before they start dumping Gen 2s into it. And so at this point, Gen 1 and Gen 2 are intermixed in the supply chain. Depending on where a gun store is getting their inventory from, if you get inventory that's been on the shelf for a bit, you might still be getting Gen 1. If you then suddenly switch distributors and buy from somewhere else, you might be getting Gen 2 and then later be getting Gen 1 later from a third party. So this is infuriating for anybody who's trying to make accessories to support these firearms. It places 100% of the customer service burden on us to help customers understand what SIG is doing. So we've already had to process a bunch of returns from customers who got brand new Gen 2 frames and immediately ordered our Gen 1 holster before we realized that this issue was overlapping. As soon as we found out, we pulled all of our AXG holsters out of stock, and we're deciding what to do in terms of getting them back on the market. Certainly, there are a lot of Gen 1 P365 AXG Legion holsters out there, and so there is still a market for holsters that fit that. Because of the difference in trigger guard width, it's not going to be possible to make a combination holster that fits Gen 1 and Gen 2 with an acceptable level of retention and security. Not going to happen. And so the question is going to be how we help customers understand which one they have to make sure they don't order the wrong thing, because that just burns up and wastes their time and our time. It eats up shipping costs, it takes returns, and it's a huge hassle. I would love to see SIG do something really, I don't know, crazy, like engrave Gen 2 on the grip module of all the Gen 2 grip modules so that anybody who can read can pick it up and read it, instead of having to have us have customers send in photos and then look at them and go, okay, based on this subtle machining difference, like slight differences in the rail profile. Nobody is going to look at one trigger guard without the other present and be able to tell, is this probably the wider one or probably the narrow one? 50 thousandths of an inch is not something that the untrained eye is going to be able to detect with any degree of certainty. So that's why all of our AXG Legion holsters are out of stock, because SIG, once again, paying no thought, no care to their aftermarket support, just decided to make a change and let it out in the wild. And that makes me really frustrated. That's bad business. It's bad for the customers. It's bad for SIG's reputation. They don't seem to care about that much these days, though. And it's bad for all the companies who are spending time and money trying to support Sig Sauer pistols. So that's my Saturday rant on the P365 AXG Legion. I will also be posting some photos next week on our website, but also on our social, to highlight the couple of key differences so that if you are struggling to figure out which version you have, at least we have some reference material for you. So thanks for watching.